And what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. We are here with Pablo and Andreas from the Offside Podcast to talk all things Charlotte FC 2024 season. Guys, how you doing? Thanks so much for being here.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, no, really excited to be here. We did a little bit of a Charlotte preview back when they first came into the league, and kind of did our own separate deep dive. But it'd be really cool to get an inside point of view on exactly what we're about to see in 2024. Lots of movement, new coaches, players in, players out. We're going to cover all of that. But before we do, we got to talk about Scarf of the Week, our favorite segment on the show, if I'm giving anything away. So what are you guys rocking? What type of scarves do you have?
Yeah, so for me, I've got our inaugural match. Nice March 5th date on there. And then just to always remember, what it was, Charlotte versus LA Galaxy. So, just had to get it, be part of the history. So it's a nice one that stays displayed up in the bedroom for sure. Nice. And then Pablo, you've got a scarf?
Yeah, I just got the classic Charlotte inaugural season ticket holder. It's not mine, it's his, but this is the one I rock. Nothing fancy about it, just supporting the team. It's not too bad.
No, I love it. That's awesome. That's super, super cool. I like it ties back to memories, and it ties back to the start from where everything kicked off. So that's awesome. Connor,
Yeah.
First of all, Connor, how you doing?
Yeah, thanks. Always forgetting about me. It's all day today. You've been forgetting about me.
Yeah, I'll work on that. Maybe. Probably.
No, you won't.
What are you talking today?
Yeah, I don't have a Charlotte scarf. And honestly, I couldn't find one that I can make a good connection with, so I apologize. This is like the stretch of the century, but I brought out my Chelsea scarf just because it literally is blue and it's not a rival team. So that's the closest stretch I can make.
I actually have a Chelsea scarf in here also for when they played West Brom a couple years ago.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm a big Chelsea fan as well.
Me too.
So. Nice.
I wish things were going better for us.
I was gonna say we can connect in the struggle for sure.
Yeah, suffer together.
Yeah.
I also don't have a Charlotte scarf, unfortunately, but instead of just picking a blue one from this side of the wall, I went and tried to find a league that you have a good amount of players from, and then see if I had a scarf that matched. And I noticed you got a relatively strong Ligue 1 presence from France. So I've brought out I haven't brought this one out in a long time, but the Olympic Marseille,
nice.
Orange and blue. It's the badge is relatively small, but I really like the very clear name on it. It's the same on both sides. But I'm looking at it, I'm like, how can I make this connection? I start clicking on some foreign players, seeing if I have a team that they might have spent on loan or something, and nothing ever crossed paths. But I did see that you had a good bit of French. I had Monaco here, and then there was one other one, I think, right here, Lens. But I was like, those aren't, those are kind of, I've used them before, but I haven't brought this one out in a long time. So there we are.
Nice. Yeah, we definitely got the French connection going on in Charlotte.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see how the new manager gets to put them into place. We're looking here at Dean Smith taking over for the first time in Charlotte, coming over from England, where he managed clubs such as Brentford, Aston Villa, Norwich, and Leicester. Last season, Charlotte finished 9th in the East, 19th overall, 43 points, 11 wins, 13 losses, 10 draws, out in the wild card round to the mighty New York Red Bulls. I don't know if you can tell, that's kind of my team. So thank you for giving us a little bit of hope and enjoyment, which we haven't had in a long time. But I guess the question I'd like to ask to you guys is, what's it like, Dean Smith coming in? How do we feel about him being in charge?
Take this one? You want me to go?
I can start off.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so for me, it's a little skeptical right now. We're going into our third season, third coach. It seems like the ownership, the message that I think they're sending out is they want immediate results, otherwise you're gone. So I'm hoping that it's not the case for Dean Smith here. It seems like he has a good enough background where like he can try to establish a program. Um, I think for this season, it's in reality, it's probably going to be more like a establishing season. We're not expecting anything big, but I think what we want is just consistency out of um, the coaching staff and then the lineups. So I'm hoping Dean Smith is able to bring that to the team and fans can react positively to it.
Yeah, I think the other thing too that I haven't seen talked about too much in regards of Dean Smith is like this is our first coach with a lot of experience. Mar, our first coach, he had some experience in some of the different South American leagues, and I think in some of the Spanish youth teams and Spanish Qatar or in the youth Qatar teams, but not a lot of top level experience. And then Latanzio, when he came in, that was his first head coaching job. He's had a lot of assistant coaching jobs, but I think his first run at bat really showed that it is quite a different thing to be like the top guy as opposed to just the assistant. And 10 draws I think speaks for a lot of like the inexperience that he brought in. So with Dean Smith having not only a lot of experience, but a lot of experience at like the top league in Premier League and then in a championship as well. I'm excited to see like what that'll be like because again, like it's the first coach with experience and has been doing this for a while and has a reputation for developing young players, which is what Charlotte have a lot of right now.
That's kind of the same feeling we have here. I didn't realize he was the first coach you brought in with, that much experience. Miguel Angel Ramirez is not a name I've thought of in quite a long time, but thinking back to him, right? You come in and it was an interesting hire because, like you mentioned, didn't have a ton of experience. Latanzio was just coming through the system, so didn't have a ton there. So this is really the first step forward to that, and I really that's a great way to think about it. Is the first one there, and now he's being given a team without a lot of new faces so far. And I know the window's still open, but it's been relatively quiet on that front. But out of the group that's come in, do you have a best addition so far?
Uh, that's a great question. For me, the one that kind of sticks out so far is probably Tiger Smalls, the college guy we drafted. I saw a highlight of a free kick he took against, I believe it was against LA Galaxy. Now it looked pretty good, and his highlights in college looked pretty good. So again, like a young, exciting attacking player, I think that'll fit well into Dean Smith style. And then again, like he's got that reputation for like developing these young players. And I would say I think Charlotte have been pretty good about that of like giving young guys chances and trying to develop talent from within. So I think he's kind of the only name on my radar right now. There's some interesting rumors going around on who he might sign, but I'm not going to get too excited until they put ink to paper,
Yeah, totally fair.
Anything for you?
Yeah, anything you want to add on that?
Uh, as far as the signings, I mean, it seems to be like a Charlotte trend to always just like wait till last minute. I think I don't know what's going on with them, but they're just they'll just wait. I'm really hoping more for uh players that have been maybe sitting on the bench for a while to just really kind of blossom this season. There's some players that we see that have a lot of potential that don't get a lot of minutes. So I'm really hoping for more for those guys to kind of step up and maybe fill in the holes there. So I'm not too impressed, or I haven't really looked at too much at the signings. I'm keeping a more close eye on the guys that are already within the organization.
Sure, and we've got a whole section where we're going to talk about that with our breakout player section. So we'll save those thoughts, and I'll go to Connor up above me on my screen and ask him, Connor, who is your best addition from a neutral point of view?
Yeah, it's been a quiet window so far. Obviously, the window's still open. I can see the rumors already on the Charlotte transfer market page, and there's a name there that looks pretty exciting. So hopefully they get that one across the line. But not going to talk about that one until, like you said, ink to paper.
Yeah, I don't want to jinx it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to go with João Pedro. I think I think Malanda and Tuiloma are my guess for who's going to be the starters heading into the season, but I think Pedro's a great addition to bring depth to that center back position, which is I think what they were struggling in a bit before he joined. I think it was a little bit thin behind Malanda and Tuiloma. So I think it was nice to bring him in. I think he's got big promise. He was a best 11 in MLS Next Pro last season, I believe. So not only is he good depth, but I think he's definitely has good potential and could eventually maybe even break into a starting role, whether that's I don't know if it's necessarily this year, but I think certainly within a couple of years he can get into that starting spot.
I love that because I love that you steal my notes because that's exactly what I have. Um, it's not a ton of it, and again, it's more rumors right now. But I am really, I don't want to say I'm really excited, but I am intrigued by the João Pedro because of how strong he was in MLS Next Pro. I think there's a fairly good chance that he can transition easily to an MLS center back at the very bottom of his potential being just serviceable. But I do think that he's got the tools to be relatively successful in that role. Absolutely. That being said, there are a lot more players out than in right now. And I was curious on your side, down on the ground over there, who's the biggest loss of some of the big ones?
Oh man. Personally or like like statistically?
However you wanted to, however you classify it, it's up to you.
Yeah, so I think personally, I think just because the management definitely listens to our podcast and they couldn't handle the criticism, they got rid of my favorite player out of spite and got rid of Derek Jones. I think that I take that one very personally. So I think that one's going to be to me a big loss because I loved watching him play. He was just so smooth with the ball and just kind of like made the game look really easy. And I think sometimes that like rubbed some fans the wrong way. That made it look like he wasn't trying. But like he just did it like so smoothly, so easily, never lost the ball, like could either draw the foul or like distribute it really well. So I think it's gonna be something that's missed. But like from a bigger picture perspective, I think the easy one to say is like Karol Swiderski, top scorer in the last 2 seasons. When he's, on his A game, he's definitely like a different caliber out there on the field. And I think it's only a loan, but I think he probably won't be back in a Charlotte jersey for sure. So I think that one kind of stinks because I think he could have had a really good career here in the MLS, like not only with Charlotte, but I think he could have been like what a Carlos Vela is in the league, been one of those top guys because he's only like 24, 25. So he could have really stood out here in the league, but that's kind of where I'm at with that one. What about you?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Jones is going to be missed. Strong defensive player. When it looked like he wasn't doing much, he was doing a lot. Reminded me of back in the day when Rio Ferdinand played with Man U, just a tall, physical player. Obviously, Swiderski is going to be missed, but just in addition to that, and you're probably going to disagree with this one, but I think we really missed the ball with Gaines, our right winger. He had a lot of speed down the sides, and that was like his one weapon. But I think it was like some young talent that we let go that could have been developed into a much better weapon. I believe he's in Nashville.
Nashville, yeah.
He's in Nashville now.
He's doing pretty well over there,
and he's
too.
doing well. So like I think we just really just missed the ball on that with especially management. I don't think they saw the talent that was there.
I think it's super. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Please.
No, go ahead. I was just wrapping up. I was like, I wish we hadn't let him go, but we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say that I think it's a super interesting point on Gaines because I think what he missed the most was a coach who could just bring the most out of him. You mentioned Miguel Angel Ramirez, you mentioned Latanzia, and it's two coaches who I think were so worried about the big picture and getting everything right, they couldn't figure out the little stuff, especially with somebody like him. So now you look forward at a guy like Dean Smith, who kind of can put those pieces together maybe a little bit faster and quicker than your other two. He might have had the time to be able to pull things out from like a Mackenzie Gaines sort of player. And I think the reason he's succeeding in Nashville is because Gary Smith has his system. He knows exactly what he's going to get out of every player that he puts on the field. So now he can take the time to focus in specifically on Gaines and get the most out of him. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, I think that's definitely a big one. Connor, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I went with Swiderski as a neutral. To me, he was the face of the team. Certainly from the start. Obviously, Capetti was a big name to bring in, but I still feel like Swiderski was the guy for Charlotte. He to me was on a short list of bright spots for Charlotte during their short MLS time so far. I mean, he had 30 goal contributions across 2 seasons in MLS, which it's not groundbreaking returns, but it's still really solid. Especially while just not many other people on the team were really providing returns of their own. So, uh, to me, he felt like a bit more of a creative striker. He was pretty high in the assist numbers for what I would typically expect for a striker, and I think he could have really worked well with Capetti, but I wish they had a little bit more time to learn how to play together. But maybe to me, maybe this is a sign that the front office is saying we're going to try to move in a different direction, and moving on from Swiderski is maybe that's their sign that like we're trying something new because what we've tried so far just hasn't really worked.
Yep.
Yeah, I think sorry. I was
No,
just
no,
saying
please go ahead.
the Swiderski Kopetti like partnership is interesting because the one game where I think it was really clicking was when we played LAFC at home. And if you watch that game, I mean, we dominated them the entire game. And a lot of that had to do with like how well they connected. And it seemed like at that time they figured it out and were going to be like pretty explosive and lethal going forward. And then we just really never saw that connection again. And they just, like you said, they never really figured out each other's rhythm. And yeah, it just didn't work out, the two of them. And then the other thing I was going to say about Gaines is what's interesting now is, we've also let Yazwiak go, and it's because he didn't really fit the profile of winger that Dean Smith is after, who is a pacey winger who can go forward, which is exactly what Mackenzie Gaines was. So I do wonder if he's going to be a bit upset that we let him go before he got there, but we'll see who he brings in. Hopefully he's got a couple names in his mind.
Yeah, and I bet you he does, and that's the I don't think he moves those guys on unless he's got somebody ready to come in, at least an idea of somebody that he wants in. So,
Yeah.
Swiderski and Jones were my two picks as well, for a lot of the same reasons you said. I love Derek Jones as a player. I think he's going to be very good in Columbus. He was one of my best signings for Columbus when we covered them a couple days ago because he's just so versatile. He can do so much. I think you guys, when you had him at striker at one point, then he was playing center back at one point, and he was in the midfield at one point. I mean, he was all over the shop, and that might have been a split between Charlotte and his time in Philly as well, where he was bouncing all over the place. But he can cover so many different positions that I think is something that makes him a big loss regardless, because wherever you're short on somebody, if you have a player like Derek Jones, you can slide him in for cover, and that's something that is definitely going to be missed. The next thing, and we were hinting at this before, is this idea of the next player up, right? A lot of faces out the door, not a lot of people in. We're looking at who is going to be from the bench or from the reserves to step up and be the next big player that's already in the squad. So who do we think is going to be the breakout player this year to watch?
Yeah. I think the Crown Legacy guys that we've moved up are definitely going to be more impactful than people think. And probably more so than like a traditional MLS Next guy is when they move up to that first team. I think the guys we brought up are pretty strong. And when I'd go out and watch them, they definitely looked like head and shoulders above the other MLS Next guys. So those are guys I'm excited to see. But for me, the two that really stick out are Patrick Ajimang and Kerwin Vargas. I think at the end of the season, we saw both those guys really like kind of start finding their stride, put the ball in the net a lot, and we're really stepping up in that like goals department that we were lacking in. And I think like the season just kind of ran out on them. I think if they would have had more time, we would have seen like a lot more consistency from them. So I'm hoping, again, with like Dean Smith's philosophy of like bringing up these young players, I hope those are two guys that really benefit from it. Who's on your mind?
I agree with you. Vargas is my boy. I like him on the left side. He is a weapon out there when he gets the minutes in. My next one would have to be Bender, I know you said he's out with a knee injury right
Yeah.
now, but Bender, when he gets the time and he's adjusted to the players that are around him, he's a good distributor of the ball.
Yeah.
He's not the one to go out and make like flashy plays or put the ball in the back of the net, or although he has done that in the past, but he's the one that connects the plays, and when he's out there in the midfield, we seem to advance better. And I would say I got two more. So Capetti, and this is my biggest one. With Swiderski gone now, Capetti really has to fill the hole that Swiderski left. To me, Capetti was not, he didn't perform as much as he was hyped up to be. And now with our main striker gone, Capetti really has to fill that hole. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on that. And then lastly, it's a young guy, played against Chelsea when they came over for a friendly. It's Brian Romero. I'm hoping Brian gets some minutes in. He's still very young, but I'm hoping Brian gets some minutes in.
Scored in the preseason.
He did score in the preseason. So, I'm hoping this is a guy that we, focus on, develop his talent, and he kind of stays in Charlotte.
Interesting. That last one was not one I had on my list. There are a couple of other ones there, but not Romero. Connor, your thoughts?
I like the Romero shot. I think that's a really good one that I think a lot of people outside of the Charlotte bubble probably won't know about. But hey, maybe this is the year that he gets an opportunity. But I'm similar line of thinking. I went with Kerwin Vargas. I think with Swiderski out, I think it opens the door for even more Vargas minutes, whether that's playing him on the wing, whether they play him more central in a role more similar to Swiderski. But the less guys in the attack there are, I think the more opportunity he'll have to play. In about 1,500 minutes last season, he had 4 goals, 3 assists, solid return. But I think this season he can build upon it even more. And who knows, maybe the South American connection with him and Capetti, maybe that's what they need up top. Maybe that's what will help get Capetti going. Maybe just the Swiderski Capetti. I know we talked about it a little bit before. That combination just didn't really click. Maybe Vargas is the guy to help him click. So I think where they end up playing him maybe may end up being a big question, whether it's out on the wing like you had mentioned, or I think transfer market lists him as a center forward. So I don't know if he has the potential to play as a second striker. But I think regardless, it's if he gets the minutes, the more consistent starter minutes this year, I think he takes that next step in his career and becomes one of the top players on the Charlotte team.
I had Ajimin as my like kind of 1A, but my 1B was Brandon Cambridge. I think he's somebody who can take a huge next step and stand out among other wingers in this league and maybe set himself up for either a big move or a big payday, whatever it may be. In just 127 minutes, he did have 2 goals, but I would expect to see a little bit more out of that. Like we mentioned, with a lot of the players on the move, you're going to need to rotate and trust on these guys. And I think he can be somebody who can step up and fill maybe not necessarily starting minute roles, but enough of a reserve rotation piece with a lot of the games that we're going to be playing. So I'm excited to see him too.
Yeah, unfortunately, he just picked up an injury and had surgery as well. So I don't
no
know what
way.
I don't know what his timeline is to come back.
Oh.
So I think maybe last week or 2 weeks ago just had surgery on something. So
my breakout player is Ajimin.
yeah.
No, but even when he comes back, I still think he'll have that ability. I didn't know that. I must have missed it in my research, but I think there's a whole host of players who can fill those roles and maybe be a breakout guy. I think it'll be really interesting to see how Dean Smith uses the youth and fills those holes of a lot of these players who have left. But I am curious of what your one kind of overarching question is for this team going into 2024. What's the one thing you're still kind of curious about?
Yeah, I think for me, it's going to be like I guess really 2 things. It's going to be how, like, the style they play, because the way they've played the last 2 seasons has been more of like a 4-3-3. And then last season was very like press heavy with, moving to a 3 in the back when we had the ball, and one of the center backs turning into a midfielder. And I thought that was like interesting to see, but I think we just didn't have maybe the athleticism or the like proficiency in front of goal to really like reward that system, because we would always get caught on the counter a lot. And so I'm interested to see how Dean Smith sets the players up and what system he wants to play. Because I know historically he's kind of played a bit different than that 4-3-3. I think more is like a 4-5-1 or 4-2-3-1, things like that. But also just how he's gonna teach this team to close out games. I mean, as you guys saw on the record, we had 10 draws, and I would bet like 7 or 8 of those were when we had like 2-goal leads. So that was a big issue last year, was just closing out games and getting the win, especially at home. So interesting to see how the team does with that this year. What about you?
Mine is just, it's more hoping for consistency out of the lineup. Last season we struggled with just, we would have guys that would perform well in a game, and then next game they weren't even on the team sheet, and we're just wondering like why. Like for example, like Cambridge, when he had that brace against, I think, Chicago, it might have been,
think so, yeah.
in an away game. I mean, he saved us in that game, and then the next game he's not even like on the bench or anything. And they would have a different formation, and it was just kind of like, okay, like what are we doing? Like, why are we doing this? So I'm hoping more of like just a consistent formation and lineup out of the team. I know it's going to be a little tough right now with new coach, new players, it's like we're starting over again, but it's year 3. But that's really like, and I think it's not just me. I think it's a lot of the fans out there. Just we want a little bit of consistency and more home wins.
Yeah. I mean, that was the big joke with the team last year, was like, oh, so-and-so played really good this game. Do not expect to see them next week. Like, they are back to the bench or back to Crown Legacy. Like, if you play well, you get benched. Like, that was the big kind of like Charlotte FC theme, it felt like last year. So hopefully this year it doesn't happen.
I remember seeing that on Twitter. Like, somebody would blow up, and it's like there'd be that one guy in the comments who was like, "Yeah, slow your roll. You won't see him for another month."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Connor, what's your question, man?
I think mine's a bit of I'd say, I guess, an obvious question, but is Capetti the man for the job? I mean, I know for a fact Andrew and I were super hyped for him when he came in last season. We do a segment where we grade like all of the different transfers that have come in, and if I remember correctly, I think we both gave the Capetti one an A. We had huge high hopes for him. Not to say that he definitely can't get there, but last season was definitely disappointing. Only 6 goals, and looking at his numbers, it wasn't even a situation where he was just maybe missing, because his XG was pretty low too. I think only 5.7 for expected goals. So it just seems like either there was just nobody really creating opportunities for him, or he just couldn't get into the right spaces. But I still think there's hope for him. I think he could turn it around. I like that it's a new season, a new manager, probably a new tactic. So I definitely think, it's like a fresh start for him. I think but it's definitely something I'm going to keep an eye on, because year 1 was definitely disappointing.
Yeah, I think this first half of the season, especially if we don't bring in another DP player, we're gonna live and die on Capetti's performances, unfortunately.
And we've seen it. I mean, when Capetti was at Racing, he had 20 goals, right? I mean, that was the big major factor why he was brought over. So maybe the coaching staff will look at what Racing had that season when Capetti was there and build around it, or try to mirror it. But I mean, there's Capetti's got some big shoes to fill, and he's got, I would think, a lot of pressure on his shoulders right now to make sure the team performs well.
Yeah, and with no Swiderski, he's got to be the guy up top to get it done. There's nobody to really like fill the shoes if he's struggling again.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is why I write 2 questions, because when Connor steals my first one, I have a backup.
Well, maybe just don't send me your notes, so then I won't take them.
So I also was curious about Capetti, right? Is he going to be the guy that we thought he could be? But my other one revolves around a player that was mentioned before, and we know that he's injured and kind of coming through this. But what is Ben Bender's role in this team? The dude drips talent. I watched him torch Red Bull with one of the most ridiculous, dirty first touch spinning, ball out of the air. I mean, things that you don't even see in a video game. The dude pulls out of nowhere. But it feels like he struggled for consistent game time. And again, we kind of mentioning with the manager playing well and then sitting, right? But he played both centrally, he played out wide. Where does he fit into the system to get him as much time as possible once he's healthy? And how does he keep that role? I think Dean Smith will appreciate that a little bit more, but with the DP guns, I think he'll probably end up out wide more than central, but the dude can do it anywhere. It's just, how do you get him on the field? Because I think what I saw, we have 1,200 minutes last year, something like that. Like, that guy has too much talent to not have more than 2,000 minutes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm hoping we don't see him out wide. I love him through the center, especially as
Mhm.
like a late runner into the box. Like, he just finds the back of the net when he's, the last man in the box, playing as more of like an 8. And again, he can move the ball so well, but like out wide, I just don't think he has like the speed for it. And you can tell he wants to drift in centrally as well, like naturally. So I'm hoping we see him more as like an 8 this year, and like you said, more consistently, because like season 1, he saw a lot more minutes, and he was, I think, our second or third highest goal scorer. And then this season, like, yeah, it was just no one could put a string of good performances together, unfortunately. But he was definitely a guy that suffered from that. So hopefully this year when he comes back from injury, it's he's just firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, I'm with you on the Bender thing. Like, he seems to be better towards the middle of the field, not towards the outside. If we were running a formation where we were basing it off the old number 10, if it was up to me, Bender, I could see him wearing the number 10 and being in that position. Like, I have that much faith in him. We've seen the glimpses of chances he creates and the talent that he has with the limited minutes that he's got.
Yeah, I think it'll be a very interesting question to keep an eye on, because not only does him not being on the field affect you like in the current phase of the game, but the dude's got sell-on potential for days. I mean, you can make a really nice return on investment on a draft pick, but
Absolutely.
you got to play him. People aren't going to buy him off the bench. That being said, it's time that we just get it out of the way. We got to make a prediction here. Where is Charlotte finishing in the Eastern Conference table in 2024?
I think right now, like if we were to go the whole season with just the squad we have now, I think maybe like 10th or 9th is going to be kind of like A+ ratings. I just think they're going to really struggle with depth, especially with Leagues Cup, and if MLS is still an Open Cup as well, and then just the physicality of MLS itself. Like, yeah, I think like 9th or 10th will probably be like best case scenario, but unless they bring in some like really game changer type dudes, I think the team's going to struggle this season, which I'm hoping fans and management will be okay with if they do, and let Dean Smith build. This year is just going to be like the foundation. It's going to be like ugly hard work, but it's going to build to something better next season. So that's kind of where my predictions for the season. What about you?
Yeah, I'm a little more optimistic. I would say best case scenario, maybe somewhere like 6. That's best case scenario. But I'm right there with you. This season, I mean, the transfer window is almost done. The season opener is about to kick off in like what, 2 weeks. The signings that we get, I mean, how much time do you really have before you can create a solid lineup and formation? It's not enough time. So it's going to be relaying the groundwork and just putting up a new product, and hopefully next season will be better. But I think, if we make it to that wild card of the playoff again, like we did this last season, that would be good enough for me.
Yes.
I would be okay with that.
Yep.
Connor, what about you?
I wish I could say I was as optimistic, but just kind of looking at the roster right now, like you were saying, I'm not in love with the guys that they have there. I think they got good pieces and good potential. And like you said, the window's not closed, so things can change, especially with especially with the guys that I see them rumored to. I mean, Obviously, I think that can change things, but at the moment, I kind of see them. At the moment, I just I don't really see. I don't know if I see enough to get them into the playoffs. I see them towards like the 13 to 15 range in the East, but I am in agreement that I think regardless of where they finish, they need to keep Dean Smith in charge and let him have the full year. Let him have another offseason next year. Let him figure out who works well with his system, and then he brings guys into the summer, and then he makes his final adjustments next winter, and now we're talking about a brand new Charlotte team heading into next year. But as of right now, I'm not too convinced by them.
I'm right with you there, Connor. I'm not super thrilled. I fully expect that if they are able to make some of those signings stick, my decisions to change. But if we're going right off of what we are looking at this roster right now, yeah, 12 to 15 is kind of where I'm feeling it. That being said, if the signing comes in, if you get one of the couple that they're rumored, maybe you jump up to that play-in game, the 8-9. But even then, I think that's a stress right now. You know, the midfield, I think, and that's one of where the biggest signing is looking to be, is not my favorite unless that guy comes in. Malanda looked very, very far from a true everyday center back last year. I think he had a lot of, at least in the clips that I saw of him, made a lot of mistakes. And Capetti is he going to be the 15 goal striker they need him to be? There's a lot up in the air, and with that much confusion, I have him a bit lower. However, I do think Dean Smith is going to turn this team into one of those really hard-nosed, grind-out result, work for the badge type of play style, which I think would be good for the group because, as we were talking about with, I believe it was Toronto, that's how you start getting back to where you want to be. You don't just sign a bunch, 3 or 4 fancy players in MLS 4.0 and it jumps you right to the top. You got to have a foundation of, defensive strength and a commitment to playing for a certain style. And I think that's what he'll bring. So I've got him low. I've got him, 12 to 15 right now, but with the potential that they could climb if those players come in.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Malanda. He had a press conference, I think, yesterday or the day before, where he said his goal for the season was to concede less goals this year. And I was like, oh, yeah, I mean, that should be the goal. That should have been the goal last year.
That sounds like you
on it this year.
That sounds like you know what being a center back is about. Good.
Yeah.
I remember I read that too. I can't remember who tweeted out the first time, but I was looking. I'm like, is this a meme account? Like, what am I reading?
Yeah.
Of course, it's to give up less goals. That's the game. if you give up less goals than your opponent, you win. Like that's the whole point.
It should be to get more red cards.
Yeah.
It's a true if you ain't first, you're last type of moment. Yeah. So.
Yeah, literally. So, guys, thank you so much for being here. We really enjoyed having this conversation with you about Charlotte and are looking forward to this 2024 season.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting season to say the less.
Yeah. So we want to give you guys a little bit of time to plug your links. Let our fans know where to find you.
Oh yeah. So we're on pretty much every major podcasting platform: Apple, Spotify, YouTube, at Offsides the podcast. You should be able to find us. Taylor Twillman did steal our name, unfortunately, so maybe you have to go to like the second or third most popular podcast name, Offsides, but we're there. Twitter and Instagram, same thing, at Offsides Podcast. But yeah, and then it has our links to our personal accounts too, but we're not super active on that.
No.
So just follow the podcast.
Yeah, I don't know if Taylor Twellman's the one you get to pick a fight with over naming rights, so that's a bit unfortunate. But
Yeah.
guys, go over there, show them some love for all your Charlotte news and takes, and make sure you let them know that you came from us. if you're new here to us and you enjoy what we did here today, make sure you subscribe because we've got another. I just counted. We've got another 10 teams coming up after this, and we've got 19 teams including this beforehand. So you can watch all the team previews from all of the teams that we've interviewed so far, and then stick around for the season because we're going to give you weekly updates on all the biggest news stories that come out. We're going to do our MLS history series that we've been doing since all of last season, and then we're going to give you our fun games and our trivias and all the other stuff that we've been doing over the last couple of seasons with just a step up. So if you enjoyed today, we hope you stick around and stick around with us and hang out. And again, Pablo and Andreas, thank you so much for being here. We hope you enjoyed it, and we will see everybody next time on the next episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. See ya.